A story of redemption and purpose. The desert stretched endlessly in every direction, and the sky was a cruel, relentless blue. The heat pressed down like the weight of all of his sins, sweat dripping from his brow as he stumbled forward. His breath was ragged and his body weak. He didn't know how long he'd been walking, hours, a day, maybe longer. He had come here to die. The cave ahead loomed like a tomb, its mouth yawning open, waiting to swallow him whole. He had lost himself, drowning in addiction, failure, and regret. The fame, the money, the adoration of millions, it all felt hollow now. The darkness inside the cave called to him. But he stood on the edge of the abyss. Something happened. A whisper, a presence, and suddenly he knew he wasn't alone. His story didn't start in the spotlight. Long before he gained the name that brought him so much fame, a name that meant anything to the world, he was just a poor boy from Arkansas, raised on the hard work of cotton fields and the sound of gospel music drifting through the air. From a young age, he was drawn to two things, music and faith. But the life had a way of testing a man. After losing his brother in a tragic accident, he carried the weight of grief that never fully left. He found solace in music and in storytelling, in pouring his soul into words. Then came the Army. Then Memphis, then Sun Records, and suddenly the world couldn't get enough of him. I Walked the Line, Folsom Prison Blues, and Ring of Fire. Hit after hit, the spotlight grew brighter, and the crowds grew louder. But inside, the darkness was growing too. Fame, it came fast, and so did the temptations. The pills started as a way to keep up with the late nights, the relentless touring, and the exhaustion. But before long, they became something more. They became a prison. He burned bridges, he wrecked relationships, he lost control. And then one day, he found himself alone in Nick Jack Cave, walking into the depths, certain that his story would end right there. But God wasn't done with him yet. In the cave, at the lowest moment of his life, he felt something he just couldn't explain. A presence, a voice that wasn't his own. He realized something, that he had been running from God for far too long. And yet, God had never left him. He staggered out of that cave and back into the light. It wasn't an instant transformation. Redemption never is. But that moment, that was the turning point. He didn't just clean himself up. He didn't just survive. He changed. He became the man on a mission. He sang for the broken, the lost, the prisoner who had made mistakes but still had worth. He refused to let the industry define him, a symbol of standing with the outcasts and the forgotten. He rekindled his faith, leaning on God instead of the vices that had once ruled him. He never shielded away from his scars. He let the world see his failures, because those failures, people saw hope. The man who walked into that cave to die, the outlaw who sang for the sinners and the saints alike, the legend who wore black, not for rebellion, but for redemption. The man is Johnny Cash. A man who fell, a man who got back up, a man who proved that no matter how far you run, God is never done with you. The inspirational lesson, you don't need a perfect path, just the right heart. Some people believe they have to have it all figured out before they turn their life around. They think they need to clean themselves up before coming to God. But Johnny Cash proves otherwise. He didn't wait to be perfect. He just turned back toward the light. And that was enough for God to do the rest. You don't have to be the perfect person. When you're ready, God calls. Because when you take the first step toward Him, He's already running toward you. Welcome to the Mental Health Janitors, where we help you clean up the mess in your head. I'm Sergeant Q, and with me as always, Doc Jess.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for being here. What an incredible story. At first, I thought you were talking about the prodigal son. I was like, oh, cool, we're going to throw that into. But Johnny Cash is a little bit like the prodigal son if you...
Yeah, he really
break
is.
It down.
If you break it down, his dad didn't really want him to go into music. He didn't want him doing anything other than worship music.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what they would play around the family. And then when his brother died, it really damaged his whole family unit, and it really, really struggled. I didn't know until I did this research about this cave incident. Like I found some things about it, and I really had to dig into that and be like, okay, I haven't heard this before.
Yeah.
He had talked about addiction. He talked about these things, but I found some interviews he did back in the 1960s about this.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, okay, this is a real cave. This really happened. He was high on barbiturates is what he was talking about. And that's where he ended up. He really didn't know like how long he'd been out there in the desert, and he found this cave and was going to walk, and he figured, oh, I'm just going to die in this cave.
Yeah. And how perfect is this story going to align with what we're going to be doing for the next month in our podcast?
It always does. I choose these stories, and Jess chooses the topics that we're going to cover. We don't talk about this. The only time we talk about this is in the pre-show. And I just tell a little bit about the story. I don't give them the reveal. So Casey and Jess have no idea who this person is. So they're finding out just like you guys are.
Yeah.
And that's the way God designed it, to line these things up, these principles. So it's perfect.
Well, you guys, I am going to be looking a little different today because I have some herniated discs in my neck I've been struggling with.
Yeah, we just took a quick break. If you notice, she's sitting at a different height, and it's because she's not actually sitting at all. She's standing.
I'm standing. So, yeah, thank you for being flexible with us.
Stand with you. Hold on.
Nice. Look at that. Battle buddy.
All right, there we go. All right, so
awesome.
I like this better.
I like this.
I stand on stage a lot, so
cool.
This is actually really cool for me.
Well, I do want to introduce to you guys what we're going to be doing for the next 4 weeks on the mental health janitors. We're going to break down what is mental health, and we're going to rediscover the basics. And for this week, we're going to define what mental health is. We're going to go over some common myths and facts. We're going to talk about what is mental resilience and give you like a lot of the things you hear us talk about over and over and over again is going to be summarized in today, and it's going to launch us into the whole month of Mental Health Month March. And so we're really excited to just really take this month and make it really intentional for you guys to get as much out of it as you can.
And if you guys are joining us for the first time, you're new to the podcast, this is going to be great. It's a great time to start and get connected, because we're going to go over some of these foundational pieces that we already know and a lot of our audience already knows, but they're really good reminders for you guys and for us.
Absolutely.
Because we get into what's called the presenter's dilemma, because we work in this space all the time. So we talk about these things.
Yes.
All of the time. And so sometimes that can get lost on the general public.
Seriously, like the reason I am have the growth that I have at the phase in life that I'm at is because I love teaching courses and doing these podcasts and counseling people, because I'm constantly reminding myself where I'm falling short and where I need to tighten up my ship. And so there's tons of statistics that show if you go to, a seminar and you just listen, you retain 20%. If you listen and write notes, it's 40. If you listen, write notes, practice to reteach it, it's like 80 to 90%. And so that's why I love participating in the teaching part of things, because all it does is encourage me to be better and to keep these habits on the forefront of my mind.
And it's great, because this is what I was doing in the training this weekend on Saturday. I was part of a training where I was teaching a bunch of mental health professionals, just like you, have to get CEUs every year.
Yeah.
Continuing education units. And so they were at this online forum where there were a bunch of different speakers, and I was one of them. And I was helping them to understand this, the presenter's dilemma, that you've got to break these things down to where the general public can understand it, and not just understand it, but apply it.
Yeah.
And so the things I was teaching were very, very simple, like a good morning routine.
We're going to get, don't jump.
Oh, okay. I'm getting ahead of us. Okay, sorry. All right. Go ahead, Jess. I'll turn it back.
Okay, so the goal of our first segment here is, what is mental health? It's not just the absence of mental illness. It's about resilience, adaptability, and daily functioning, okay? Emotional, physiological and social well-being is all a part of mental health. And the brain is like a muscle, you guys. It needs maintenance just like any other physical health that we have, just like a car, just like our body. In order to have the healthiest body, we have to intentionally put work into it. And that's the same as our mental health. So some common myths versus facts, and you're going to like these. One myth is that mental health is only about mental illness. Fact, everyone has mental health, just like physical health. You can't say, I don't have mental health. It's like saying, I don't have a heart.
There is a kind of an undercurrent movement right now in the mental health space to stop calling it mental health because there is such a stigma.
Yeah.
They call it being mentally fit.
There you go. I thought we were trying to start a trend of being mentally resilient.
Yeah, we can, but we just need to change the stigma around mental health as it's something negative, like it has a negative connotation in society right now. Like, oh, let's talk about mental health. It's like, oh gosh.
But why is it not a stigma to say I'm working on being physically fit?
Right. That's the point. The more of us that talk openly about it, the more we can break down that stigma. And you know where I learned that mental fitness piece was from Lance Armstrong.
I bet.
I was at a conference where Lance Armstrong was talking about that. And if you know who Lance Armstrong is, he won a bunch of cycling championships, and then it found out that he was cheating during that time. And so it really ruined his career. I have a good buddy who used to ride with him. And I was at a conference and snuck backstage to meet Lance Armstrong.
You did.
Did I tell you this story?
Yes.
Oh, it's amazing. For you guys who don't know, I'm that guy. I do things that are just unbelievable. He spoke at this conference and he didn't come out to do a meet and greet. I'm like, I got to go see this guy.
Oh my gosh.
I saw these janitors.
Janitors?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
That were
going put on a janitor uniform.
No, almost.
I would pretend.
So they were coming into the left side of the stage and they were going in the side door. And all these people were trying to go to this right side. And I just followed these janitors in backstage. And once I got backstage, I was like, okay, now I'm here. Play it cool. Act like you belong. And I made my way
You're
through.
A janitor.
Exactly. So it was easy. But I ended up, the whole long story, but I ended up meeting Lance Armstrong, talking with him for a few minutes. And he really broke down this idea of mental health has such a negative connotation to it. Let's call it mental fitness, just like we say physical fitness. Mental fitness is what he's trying to push.
Yeah. And
that's something that we can think about.
Yeah.
Is being mentally fit.
Sure.
As being a positive instead of a negative.
Yeah. Then another myth that is very common is only weak people struggle with mental health. The fact is, mental health struggles affect even the strongest of people. To not sound cocky, I'm one of the mentally strongest people I've ever known. But why is that? Because I have been to war. I've seen combat.
More than that though, you put in the work to heal after that. That's what was so important.
Yeah, so I do.
You put the work in though.
Yeah.
That's the
eventually.
But a lot of people don't. They stay in the victim mentality.
Yeah.
They've received a moral or mental or emotional wound and they never try to repair it. And they live in that victim mentality that I talk about. Mm-hmm. And I lived there for a long time till I decided to take control of my mental health journey and found healing. And now I teach other people how to do the exact same thing.
Yeah. And me. So thank you for that.
Yeah. And you're one of them.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I'm sure I've helped you too.
Yeah.
Like that. I'm trying to... You like that? No.
Yeah.
So what is mental resilience or becoming mentally fit? It's the ability to bounce back from adversity, stress, and challenges. It's a skill, not a personality trait, you guys.
Ooh, that's really good.
Meaning it can become developed.
It can be learned.
It has to be developed. It doesn't come naturally to anybody. And
it really doesn't.
Yeah. Past experiences, beliefs, and habits shape our resilience or shape our mental fitness level, right? So now that we understand what mental health actually is, let's talk about what makes it hard to maintain.
Laziness. I just be upfront. That's me. There's days where I'm like, I don't feel like doing this. And I'm like, but I have to do it. The laziness is the hard part for me.
He's all up in my notes here. Okay. And that's how it's going to be today. So how over time does mental health get weakened? Okay. The biggest factors that impact mental health and make resilience harder to build is our brain's default settings.
Yes.
And this is what
comfort.
This is what you talk about all the time. The default settings of how our brain is wired for survival, not happiness. So we are wired to go to that negative bias every time. And we have tons of episodes, we're not going to go into it, that we talk about this negative bias or this perception bias. And our brain is wired for that. So like G.I. Joe says, knowing is half the battle. Just know that your brain is wired to the negative. And that's why there's so much research out there to prove that even just having a short gratitude journal every morning reduces the amount of negativity you get pulled to. And throughout this month, this is kind of like our summary. And to get you guys excited that we're going to give you some such good tools this month on how to combat some of these default brain settings, okay? Also, the other thing that slows down or weakens our mental health or our mental fitness is external stressors. So if you've had trauma, combat childhood trauma, abuse, major life events, chronic stress like work pressure, relationships, finances, environmental factors, sleep, diet, social media, right? This is where we get our saying, control the controllables. There's some things we cannot control. We cannot control the childhood trauma that happened to us. I cannot control the soldiers that chose to end their lives after we got back from Iraq, okay? I can control my sleep. I can control my social media intake. I can control my nutritional intake. And those are all huge external external stressors that can either help or hurt my mental fitness or my mental resilience.
When I first get started with people, and so I coach a lot of businesses, a lot of CEOs right now that are, 6-figure CEOs. And some of them are 7-figure CEOs that I coach. And I always start them the same place.
Mm-hmm.
You say you can't control your day. And if you try, you're going to fail. But what you can control is the first 20 minutes and the last 20 minutes of your day. You can control those two pieces. And if you can do that, the rest of your day is going to be much, much easier.
Yeah. And it's that first baby step of literally your life changing for the better in the right direction. And I'm a testimony to that. You guys, I was that free spirit, like, no, and I just, if I have to take my kids to work or to school by 9, what's the latest I can wake up, right? Like I had no morning routine. I had no night. I started learning a nighttime routine because of my insomnia issues from my trauma. Okay, so I started working on that a little bit. But once Sergeant Q hammered on me so hard to say, hey, I want to work with you through this, but in order for me to give you these services and to help you through this, you've got to commit to my 45-day challenge. And so I did. And that was over a year ago, and it's changed my life. And so
how long did it take you to start seeing results? Just to start seeing results with that? How many days?
Oh gosh, 3 or 4.
3 or 4 days. It's amazing. You get early wins if you do it consistently.
Mm-hmm.
By the first week, you're like, why have I not been doing this?
Yeah.
But here's the thing. You will hit a slump though. About day 15 to day 20, that's where I see a lot of people really start to struggle because now it's just become a habit and it's become automatic.
You have to push through.
And you have to push through, right, to get to the other side of that.
Yeah. And the last thing of how mental health gets weakened over time is internal stressors. So those of us that struggle with negative self-talk or destructive thought patterns like cognitive distortions that we've talked about and that we'll break down in later episodes. This is like catastrophizing or all or nothing thinking, blaming, and then emotional suppression, how ignoring emotions can make them worse. So the good news is mental health isn't just something that happens to us. We actually have a lot more control than we think, right? So let's talk about what we can do. So moving into our last segment for today is mental health as a skill, building the foundations, okay? So our goal is to encourage you guys with simple, actionable strategies to start building mental resilience today. So I'm going to start with that self-awareness piece, okay? This is the G.I. Joe that I always quote, knowing is half the battle. In marriage, in relationship, in your job, in every aspect of your life, in order to be constantly growing in your character, in yourself, in your mental resilience, in your mental fitness, you have to start becoming self-aware. You cannot be blind to your shortcomings or your triggers or your emotions. And so noticing your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors instead of running on autopilot is going to be your first step in learning how to build this mental fitness, okay? And then, so an example is just journaling, self-reflection, prayer, meditation, okay? Then I'm going to let cue jump into the second most important, and that's the power of daily habits.
Yeah, the daily habits are really important. But before we get there, when you're journaling, it's great to journal about your day. That's fine. But I really want you to focus on journaling on conflict that you have. Just start writing it down. Like, this is what happened.
That's really good.
Just start writing down that conflict. And I'm not going to really give you anything to do right now. Actually, I am. When you're writing that down, just write down what happened. And then ask yourself one simple question. What could I have done differently in that moment? That's it. What could I have done differently? That's that moment of self-reflection. You're going to get the story out, then you're going to ask one question. What could I have done differently? Just ask the question. In the weeks to follow, we'll give you some things you can do. But right now, I just want you to reflect. Be very reflective on what could I have done different in that moment. It's not about being right or wrong. It's what could you do different? Okay. The power of daily habits. It takes the brain on average between 45 and 66 days to make something a habit. But that means you have to do it every single day. The best time to do this is first thing in the morning. First 20 minutes of your day, your brain is in alpha wave mode, which means that it can take in more information and learn faster during the first 20 minutes of the day than the rest of the day. And what you're doing in those first 20 minutes in alpha wave state is you're programming your brain on what you want it to look for, what it thinks is important. That's what you want to be able to do. So when you're in alpha wave state, you're going to be able to build habits so much faster and they're going to be so much stronger. So be mindful in those first 20 minutes what you're putting in. If you want to know more information, go to day1challenge.com. That's O-N-E, day1challenge.com. I break everything down for you guys right there. You can do it right there. Sign up and do the day one challenge. I guarantee it's going to change your life.
Yeah. Another habit is like even just Googling for a few minutes, like good sleep routines, right? So in my journey of learning good sleep, what do they call it? Hygiene, right? Like I turn the lights down an hour before, all screens are off an hour before bedtime. I light a certain candle an hour before bedtime. So those smells, so all of my senses are starting to take in, right? Because our circadian rhythm, right? If we think about thousands of years ago, when the sun came up, everybody woke up, did their chores, worked for everything they had to do. The sun went down at the same time every night and everybody went to sleep. And it was just that really structured and routine circadian rhythm. And that's honestly the best thing you can do for your mental health is have a good, healthy circadian rhythm. And that's why the morning routine and the evening routine are going to be the most important things to jumpstart your mental fitness, okay? And so a good sleep routine, just an hour before, setting some things up to help your body wind down, right? If you do that morning routine, like one of my first steps in my morning routine was, I'll just tell you one, was going outside for 5 minutes and doing some fresh air breath work. And that jump-started my circadian rhythm to say you're awake. And then my body, after doing that for about 13, 14 days, I noticed my melatonin. So then scientifically, biologically, your melatonin starts to release 12 to 14 hours later. And it's incredible how I needed less and less sleep medication because my body was actually starting to do what it was supposed to do on its own. Also movement, 5 minutes a day helps. If you're not doing any movement, do 5 minutes a day.
Motion is medicine.
It is. And it's a cliche for a reason. And then limiting negative intake, news, social media, toxic relationships. You guys, sometimes it's not what do you do, it's what you don't do, okay? And we've talked about that before too. So as we're wrapping up today, okay, our final wrap up, some key takeaways to recap. Mental health is not just about illness. It's about resilience and adaptability. Trauma, stress, and negative thought patterns weaken mental resilience. Mental health is a skill you can build with awareness and daily habits that we give you every week, okay? Even if we're boring, watch us, okay? We're going to give you tools, okay? I'm calling you to action here today, you guys. We want to encourage you to reflect on your own mental health habits this week. Simple challenges like a gratitude journal or 5 minutes a day reducing negative self-talk, okay? We're inviting you guys to tune in next week and the next 3 weeks for a deeper dive into what challenges mental health and how to overcome it.
As always, we want to do three things. We want to educate, empower, and encourage you on your mental health journey. For the Mental Health Janitors, I'm Sergeant Q.
I'm Doc Jess.
And we're out.